Welcome back for another great panel at the Centre Court MBA Festival with Poets and Quants. My name is Matt Simmons, and with my co-host John Byrne, we're taking the next 2 days to sit down with MBA admissions officers, students, alumni of the world's leading business schools to discuss both the personal and professional benefits of an MBA and set you up for long-term success. If you haven't noticed, the world is changing. Are you ready? From AI to analytics, lessons in leadership to action-based learning, the MBA is designed to prepare you for the world of work tomorrow and then tomorrow's tomorrow. So it's a pleasure to welcome three outstanding business schools to talk about today and tomorrow, and the incredible ROI that you would benefit from any of their MBA programs. From UNC Kenan-Flagler, it's lovely to have Katie Riddell, who is the Director of Full-Time MBA Admissions and Student Recruitment. From Indiana, Kelley, Brad Rosenwinkel, who is the Senior Associate Director of Admissions and Financial Aid. And from Michigan, Ross, Andrea McHale, the Director of Admissions for both the full-time and global MBA programs. Welcome to all three of you for the next 45 minutes on Centre Court. We love to go beyond the websites and hear the energy and the enthusiasm in your voices as you talk about institutions that you love. So perhaps, Andrea, just get us started with Michigan Ross and what makes it such a great business school.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt. I'm excited to be on this panel today with Katie and Brad. Just a little bit about the Ross School of Business and the University of Michigan. We are located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So it's about a 30-minute drive from Detroit, Michigan. We are about a 4-hour drive or a quick flight to Chicago, but really in the heart of the Midwest. And so it makes it a unique atmosphere of everyone coming together to learn and grow and develop as full-time MBA students. But our alums typically reside within many different areas of the world outside of Ann Arbor. So it is that unique experience that our students have. And with that brings a very tight-knit, close, collaborative community. I know we'll have questions around what we look for, but that's definitely something within that admissions process that is outside of those transcripts and quantitative aspects that we really are looking for, because it brings the essence of our collaboration and impact that we have here within Ross and the MBA program. So that's a little bit about Ross, and I'll turn it back to Matt.
Andrea, congratulations. You got through that presentation without whispering the words "Go Blue." And whether you say that in New York or New Delhi, there will be a Ross alum somewhere that knows exactly what that means. Brad, Kelley, outstanding ROI, incredible flexibility in the program. What makes the Kelley School such a special place for you?
Yeah, certainly, and super happy to be here. Know both of these ladies very well. We go way back in the industry as well, and so excited to be here and share a little bit with everyone today. I think Kelley is, positioned in a great place. We're about an hour south of Indianapolis in Bloomington, Indiana. We're about 3 to 4 hours from Chicago, very centrally located in the Midwest. Some benefits, and I think highlights of Kelley, is that we're the largest business school in the United States overall. But within that business school, the full-time MBA program, or what we now call the full-time plus flex MBA program, is only about 100 to 120 students in each incoming class. So you get the resources of the largest business school in the country, but you also have that individualized coaching approach. The focus on each individual student and their personal development, in the program, helping them guide them through, the next steps in their careers and go on and do great things there as well. So that's really kind of I think the big differentiator that stands out. Certainly the close collaboration, the family atmosphere, when you're in that very intimate environment, leads to a lot of different types of things that we're able to do, working with students, but then also programmatically as well. I mentioned the Plex option in our MBA program as well. It's a new feature of the program. The traditional 2-year program is here, but as an option in your second year, students can opt to be fully remote online. They have to either be fully in person or fully remote that second year. You can't do a hybrid, but it does add some flexibility there to leverage some of the resources, again, across the school, having the #1 online MBA program combined with the top full-time MBA program to complete your degree there as well.
We'll be talking about the power of your respective alumni networks. I think there's a lot of power in our own admissions networks. All of you know one another, you tour around the country and internationally together. Katie, it's lovely to have you as part of this group of three. We're talking about flexibility, and of course, concentrations at Kenan-Flagler is part of that, and how your students can personalize the experience. But it's a big picture of Kenan-Flagler and the MBA program.
Thank you, Matt. I couldn't agree more. It's really fun when I pop online and see friends that we get to meet along the way over our years in this industry. So Kenan-Flagler, University of North Carolina, is located in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which makes up the third point of what we call the research triangle, which each of those points having a major research institution, including the University of North Carolina, which then fosters an ecosystem for innovation, entrepreneurship, and access right outside of our campus to some of the top industries, but also companies globally. You mentioned flexibility, absolutely. Here at Kenan-Flagler, it's a one-semester core, meaning that the second, third, and fourth semesters you spend as a full-time MBA student are fully flexible for you to decide what that pathway is to meet those short and long-term goals as an MBA student, but certainly as an alumna of the University of North Carolina. It is an incredible environment that fosters community and really living that Carolina way of lifting each other up and bringing the whole community forward together. I constantly hear this from employers, from alumni, and certainly from our students, and the way that they engage with each other and the way that they pick each other up and create that environment for learning. I also love just the access that students have outside of the business school to the greater Carolina community, going across campus, attending that guest lecture, or taking an elective outside of the business school really expand your network, not only as a student, but certainly as an alumna of the school.
Andrea, you get to welcome talent from all over the world every year. Does that moment of meeting them after applications, does the joy of that moment ever fade?
No, it's my favorite part. We do admit calls like many other programs, so there's a few things that I do that are my favorite. It's calling our newly admitted, meeting our incoming class, and then honestly the recruitment part, meeting prospective students and the excitement and the joy that they bring to this process. Those are my three favorite moments of being an admissions officer.
When we describe a class profile from one year to the next, of course, there are average test scores and GPAs and other things in them. But when you think, Andrew, about the incoming class, how do you like to describe them and the inherent diversity that Ross attracts?
There's just so many levels of when you think about diversity, like primary, secondary, education experiences, country of origin. And really, our mission is to create the most diverse profile we can to enrich the learnings, the outcomes, and the experience our students have. And so Ross does a really good job of having a number of different countries represented, a lot of different backgrounds. We're pretty much equal in terms of STEM, humanities, and business backgrounds coming into our program. So that diversity of thought is definitely there.
The students that arrive at Kelley, Brad, as you said, the biggest of the US business schools, but they're each with their individual stories that they brought to Kelley. When you think about them, are there certain characteristics that perhaps they share?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, we often get the question, what do I need to do in my application to stand out? What is the admissions committee really looking for? Right across the industry, candidates are always trying to figure that out. And I think ultimately it's being yourself. And that's what, we're all trying to do is really understand who those students are. We often find, obviously very talented students that bring different skill sets, experiences. Andrea spoke to the diversity of experience that candidates bring. But also I think, some key things that we look for at Kelley are, the students that are going to be engaged. They're going to be, givers and contributors to the program, as well as, taking things from the program for themselves. Another characteristic we look for is coachability. students that are open to feedback and coaching. As I mentioned, we have a very intimate program, there. And so a lot of that is dependent on those individual relationships, family-oriented relationships. And, sometimes your family has to give you some tough love and hard feedback, and maybe not, you don't necessarily always want that, but you need it, to grow as a person, as a professional. And so I think, those are a couple of the key characteristics, that we look for and identify in our students, and certainly find.
A similar question, Katie, in terms of the incoming students, again, all with personal experiences, but perhaps a shared sense of purpose and why they've chosen Kenan-Flagler. What do you see in the incoming class that you admitted just a few months ago?
I would build on what my colleagues have said in terms of students that are seeking out the right community for them to learn in, that they have the right resources to support achieving those personal and professional short-term goals. We see students coming from 40 plus different countries around the world, and as many different undergraduate, sometimes master's degree, and then certainly industries coming into the classroom. It's really important to my team and I that as our students are sitting in those first couple of weeks of classes, they're not only learning from the faculty who's facilitating a conversation around the room, but they're learning from the individual sitting next to them. One of my favorite moments is when I hear someone in the classroom or at a breakfast say, "That's a job. I didn't know I could have a job like that." And suddenly those they're often running to learn and research and understand what that new industry or pathway could be for them, with the support of all the systems around them here at Kenan-Flagler.
As a top business school, Andrea, perhaps sometimes you hear from admitted candidates, I can't believe that you chose me, but you did, and your team spends so much time, to evaluate candidates and their different stories. Perhaps building on what Brad was saying, beyond test scores, beyond academic rigor, some of the characteristics that you love to see in people that are going to thrive at Ross.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm just going to preface with anything that we're asking on the application is important to our programs. We're not trying to create barriers. And why we ask for essays and resumes and conduct interviews is outside of the quantitative aspects of your competitiveness against an applicant profile is fit. Can you be collaborative and work in teams? That's a really good indicator for us that you're going to be successful in our program, as well as within the business space. Assessing those communication and interpersonal skills, essays and interviews are a great way to showcase that. We're also looking for resilience and self-awareness. So Brad talked about coachability. That's absolutely part of it. You are going to have opportunities to grow so much, but with that, being receptive to feedback is a way that we're trying to assess within that application. And then Ross, in terms of what we look for, is a commitment to impact. It's a big part of our mission, and ways to demonstrate that through your letter of recommendation, your essay, and your interview is a great way to showcase.
Right. Perhaps sometimes candidates scratch their heads and say, well, I'd love to show you signs of leadership, Brad, but that's not in my job title, or different places to look. And I'm sure, again, with your team, you've got great experience. How can candidates demonstrate things like leadership at this early stage in their career?
Yeah, another great question. And I think, the key word is potential. We are all looking for potential. We realize that, candidates will come to our programs and grow and develop and be great alumni and great, business professionals, in their career, and be able to give back and lead in that way. And we're charged with trying to identify potential, for that, and the raw skills, the raw materials. So whether or not a candidate has had formal leadership roles or managed people or those different types of things, I don't want to say is irrelevant, but certainly, we look for what skill sets do they have, what experiences have they had, diversity of experiences and perspectives to be able to potentially step in to that role, leadership role and capacity there as well. Again, the ability to communicate, the ability to present themselves professionally, the ability to work with others, those different types of things are all skills that Many candidates have. And so we're looking at, again, that potential of the experience that they have had. What have they demonstrated in order to be able to grow and move into a leadership type of role?
Yeah, I must admit, I would love to sit in on these team discussions because, the focus that all three of you and your schools focus on potential, what this individual would bring, it strikes me as being so positive. So, with that, Katie, as you then think about test scores, the test scores just reassure you and say, okay, they can handle the numbers. They don't need to be a rocket science. They'll thrive in the classroom. But you're seeing other characteristics in them and saying, now that's what makes us excited. Are those the sort of discussions you might have?
Absolutely. We're really measuring and evaluating every applicant on a series of capabilities. One set of those capabilities is understanding their comfort level with a rigorous quantitative MBA program, which we can see in a test score, past academic experience is in some cases the work that they're doing now or the role that they have that may be more analytical. On top of that, we're also looking to understand what those personal characteristics are that will contribute to our community, whether that is taking a lead role on a work stream or tackling a difficult project that maybe some of your peers would shy away from. How comfortable are you in this agile world where we need to be more comfortable being uncomfortable? And so we look for those little nuggets of where you've raised your hand, where you've started a new initiative or joined a new initiative, either at work or even in your community. Those are very telling of what type of member of the UNC community you will be as a student, but also as an alum.
Right. With the emphasis at Ross on action-based learning, we talk about being coachable, Andrew. Is that part of it? What is action-based learning really facilitating and then revealing about the student?
So our pedagogy is that action-based learning principle, and it's really as much as we can create hands-on, real tactical learning opportunities for our students. That's what we're here to support. I think the biggest standout is our capstone multidisciplinary action project, which all of our MBA ones conduct as it's the last 7 weeks of their MBA experience in their MBA 1 year. And you're working as a consultant with real organizations, either for-profit or nonprofit organizations across the globe. And you are traveling on site, you're conducting work remotely, you have a real deliverable. We have other classes that are like 6-credit classes with multiple faculty members. You're working with a consulting firm. So as many opportunities as we can create to have that hands-on the tactical learning, we've seen and we have a lot of research that supports the success metrics that you will have within your career post Ross.
When you sort of wave them goodbye for the 7 weeks of the map at the end of their first year, Andrew, and then they come back from
Yes.
anyone's 20 countries, 80 projects. Can you already see a difference in the individual that's left and the individual that returns?
It is, I think, a lot of growth and maturity because it's 7 weeks where you are able to truly reflect. We call it that internship before the MBA internship. And you see that growth in really that self-awareness. I think a lot of our MBAs have a good level of self-awareness, but that just really just helps facilitate that. The actionable deliverables, because it's not a clear cut how they are going to achieve these outcomes. So it really sets them up for success into that internship. So yes, absolutely. I think I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, Matt. So rein me in if you need to. But yes, it's an amazing experience. And it's typically the standout, not just in terms of their growth and development within their careers and their MBA experience, but that collaboration, the tight-knit community that they grow with their teams, and that carries through not just their MBA experience, but into the rest of their life.
Right. And no doubt, Brad, that first year and a tight-knit community, that's also going to matter for those that pick up the Plus Flex option, because that's the second year you could, if you chose, follow the rest of the program online, but building on all of the connections that you've made with your classmates in the first year. How does that work?
Yeah, certainly I think that's a big part of business school, right? Is the network and the relationships that you create and are able to maintain post graduation there. From the get-go, we have students, we are very intentional about what we do in each aspect of the program, all the way down to the teams that they're on. And so before students get to campus, we're looking at their backgrounds, their perspectives. We work very closely admissions and student services in creating the teams. And so they're a very diverse team. Typically a couple of international students, a couple of domestic students, a couple of men, a couple of women, variety of different professional backgrounds, personal interests that we're able to gather, either from their admissions application or that we collect from them, once they say, yes, I'm coming, those different types of things, and try to build, those teams intentionally so that there are times when students can step up and lead. There are times when students need to, maybe take a step back and lean on their teammates, developing some of those again, leadership skills, teamwork skills, emotional intelligence. We talked a little bit about EQ, there as well, and recognizing, their strengths and weaknesses, but then also building that camaraderie, within your team, within your cohort, so to speak. There's that aspect of it that happens in the classroom, but then certainly outside of the classroom. And I think, each one of us here on this discussion today are in, somewhat college towns. Bloomington and Ann Arbor and Chapel Hill are all a little bit different than each other, but we all like to call ourselves, college towns, there as well, and the community that comes with that. Once you get outside of campus, outside of the classroom, and able to, build those relationships, that affinity for the place that you're in, rather than just the building that you're in, there as well. And so I think the relationships that are formed are long lasting. The affinity for the place is long lasting. I know that alumni from each of our programs are always happy to talk about or reminisce about their time in, Bloomington or wherever it might have been. And I had a great opportunity to just get together with a few of our alums last week. As we travel and do recruiting events, we're meeting with prospective students, but also reconnecting with alumni that we might have worked with, 10, 15 years ago. And it's great to hear how they're doing in their careers, see the progression that they've made, both professionally and personally, hear how their families are doing. They have kids, all of those different types of things that happen in life, and to just see kind of the, how they've changed from when you met them in the admissions process to now. I want to say they've grown and become, I don't want to say human beings, but, working professional adults with families and a whole different perspective of life. It's really cool and rewarding to see. And I'll add to, Andrea's highlights earlier of her three favorite moments, working in admissions. Certainly reconnecting with alums down the road and hearing their stories is a big part too.
Reconnecting with alums 10 years out and how things can change. Already, Katie, if we think about what a candidate might share in their application, the MBA next steps, and sharing with you maybe what they see as their future post-MBA career vision. Then you say, well, we've got 13 concentrations. You could look at this, and then this is how, overwhelming them with great possibility of choice. Do they need to know where they're headed after business school, or is there this opportunity to really explore new opportunities?
I think we see both, and I would encourage both perspectives coming into school. I think the application process is meant to be self-reflective, right? As Andrea said, we are purposely asking for certain information or asking certain questions along the way, and that will bubble up some priorities for each of these candidates and how they want to take the next steps in their career and how the MBA will support those next steps. At Kenan-Flagler, that may mean the opportunity to combine a number of concentrations. I think of these as like roadmaps, especially for my career changers. If you're coming from marketing and going to finance, there is a certain a certain pairing of courses and experiences that hiring teams and future companies for you will want to see that you've had early on in your MBA experience in order to be successful in that internship and first roles post-graduation. And so these concentrations create those roadmaps. I often find that students get to their second year and realize, oh, I'm only one elective shy of a sustainability concentration. Let me go take that last class and gain that and earn that concentration. It is, like I said, a roadmap. It doesn't end up on your degree or diploma, but it's a great signal to the market that you have a vocabulary, that you have a skill set of experiences that will carry you forward and be successful in those future roles. But some students come in and they know that they're going to continue on in a certain vertical, and they're looking to round out their portfolio or their toolkit, we often like to say in admissions. And so they're gaining more of a general management exposure and understanding how decisions are made across the table or to a global perspective across the world in order to advance business and advance society.
I introduced the idea at the beginning, the world is changing. And I imagine, Andrea, that the curriculum changes too, but both the core curriculum, the choice of electives in a world of AI and data and healthcare and so many other aspects. How do you ensure at Ross that what students are learning is reflecting skills that are going to be valuable for them in the next stages of their career?
Yeah, I mean, we take a lot of different inputs in from students, from our employers, from our faculty and the research that they're conducting to really always evolve our curriculum to be as supportive of what the trends are and what our needs of our student base is. So yes, AI, machine learning is definitely an area that's growing for us. I feel like each semester we're adding more and more elective coursework. I think we have more opportunities and growth, and it's evolving how that plays into our core curriculum. So I see that kind of changing in the next year or two, but definitely our elective base has changed. Additionally, we added an ESG concentration last year. We had previously had a sustainability, but as that has evolved really to encompass more than just sustainability, we've enhanced our elective offering to support those needs. And then healthcare and biotech, it's definitely a growing industry in general in terms of what's our interest from our students and what the need is from an industry standpoint. So we do a lot of work with our centers and institutes through Zell Lori and our Business Plus Impact to help support those healthcare growth needs. And then we have a student-led investment fund that is one of the focus would be within that healthcare realm.
So, I mean, AI is evolving so quickly, Andrea. And is it sort of, okay, this is what we know, or is it ensuring that they just have a framework for thinking and looking at a problem from different perspectives to then be able to follow the evolution of AI or healthcare or other fields?
I really think it is both. So we have students that their interest is to pursue career paths that are completely focused within AI and machine learning. And so we have to support those highly technical needs from the student population that want that. We also need to support our students that need to understand how that impacts them in their career journey and in their learning. So it needs to be a blend of both. And so our elective coursework, obviously students are self-selecting into that. And then as we define what that looks like and develop it through our core curriculum, there is going to be a component throughout their entire MBA experience that has an AI or a machine learning dynamic.
Right. There's the idea, Brad, that when something comes to us too easily, we almost lose it. We could lose it as quickly. Whereas when it's difficult to understand or get your head around a concept, you really then build it. To take your example earlier of putting together some very thoughtfully constructed groups with the diversity of experience, and then they say, hey, the group's not working. Is that an opportunity to learn? Do you then sort of say, oh, why is it not working? And look at those dynamics.
Yeah, certainly. I think there's a lot of learning that happens, right? There's learning from the program of saying, what may or may not have happened here. What was the intent and what was the outcome? We often refer to an after action review. those different types of things. We do that with a lot of the things that we do internally as a program. But then also there's the opportunity of the students on that team. What did you learn from that experience? And part of that team experience and that feedback and coaching is each one of those teams will have a coach. And each one of those individuals will have a coach. And so talking through kind of how is your team dynamic playing out throughout the semester, as well as at the end, how did this go? And at the very beginning, we spend 3 weeks before classes even start with students in their team in our Innovative Me Inc. program, where we're really working on students focusing on themselves, their teams, where they want to go. But part of that is also, they're with their team and getting to know their team and figuring out that dynamic and where they fit in and where they need to lean on their team. But then also they're developing a team charter. That's part of the task of those 3 weeks is, you're going to have more than likely somebody on your team that their number one priority is to have a 4.0 GPA. You're going to have someone whose number one priority is to get, the best job that they can. You're going to have somebody's priority who's going to be, I want to network and get to know as many of my classmates as possible. There are different priorities that each student is going to have within that team dynamic. And so learning as much as you can up front and developing that team charter, but then also learning as you go through that process, because the real world, speaks, very similarly in a sense that we never know who we might be paired with in a work scenario or in life or whatever scenario we might face, but we have to be able to manage that. And understand, what we bring, what we can learn, maybe where we need to take a step back at the same time. And so certainly opportunities to, programmatically evaluate and assess, what has happened, but also I think even more so as individuals, in that environment, learning of how things went, what might we have been able to do differently, or I might have been able to do differently, and the outcomes that, we impacted.
Right. So there's a constant self-reflection, which perhaps Katie, it starts with applying to business school, right? You're early stages of your career, you're working hard, but you'll invite candidates to step back and really think, perhaps, a generation that has, strong personal values, sense of purpose, and the career direction that they want to take. What advice do you have to match that sense of purpose, those values, and align it with a school and its personality and culture?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I know that every one of our programs will offer a fabulous academic experience. What's important in aligning to your values, your learning style, is understanding how that curriculum is delivered, what opportunities beyond the classroom are there to triangulate that growth opportunity from a leadership perspective. It's really important that you're finding the right environment for you to learn in. We all offer very different learning environments, and you should be prepared to come in and sort of hit the ground running in an environment that suits you best, right? And that includes just the environment that you're in. Are you looking for a big city? Are you looking to be in a college town, much like our schools are located in, with quick access to international airports? But that does change the learning environment and the kind of students that are attracted to that school or to that MBA program. I also recommend thinking about the interdisciplinary approach to the learning. Are you really on a vertical looking to be a more technical expert, or are you more interested in a general management education? What is that long-term goal? What tools and resources do you need as strengths, but also filling in some of those blind spots in order to be more proactive as a student, but certainly more impactful as an alumni?
Right. And then there's the student in the classroom, Andrea, but equally, so many clubs, activities. You've got your art fair on the weekend in Ann Arbor and farmers, perhaps more opportunities than we could possibly find time to enjoy. What role are they playing in this both personal and professional development of the 2-year program?
I'm sorry, what the role of the
Clubs,
student?
activities, they have you
Oh,
beyond.
okay, sorry.
You're giving
Yes.
so many other options.
I feel like the experience of an MBA student, you have your curriculum, right? The core classes, the classes that you're taking. You have the experience outside of the classroom through centers and institutes, student organizations, different activities, as well as then the career development opportunities that come in terms of the employer networking and the relationships. It really rounds out your student experience by participating in the clubs, the centers and institutes, the opportunities outside of the classroom that benefit you most. It is very easy to get overwhelmed very quickly as an MBA student. Any of our programs are going to have an endless amount of opportunity. So I think it's really important to learn as much as you can and take advantage of the opportunities in those student clubs and the centers and institutes that are going to benefit you most. And that might be a growth opportunity. It might be something completely out of your comfort zone or out of your scope of previous education or work experience, but do things very intentionally. You can really gain a lot of insight and perspective in these opportunities outside of the classroom, and it is a big part of the MBA experience. So try and take advantage of that, but I just will say it's very easy to get also overwhelmed. So do it with intention, and that not one person is going to be able to experience everything an MBA has to offer. So you have to be very intentional.
Do you have advice, Brad, for that first day? And they're like, well, I want to sign up for this. And, they're running in a million directions and just getting them to think about how they might prioritize.
Yeah, certainly. And we see that growth. Students come in and have all the energy and enthusiasm of the world. And that's great. That's part of the excitement of the beginning of the year, as Andrea said, the first day of class, orientation, everybody, showing up on campus. But certainly, identifying maybe what your passions are, but then also being open-minded to discovering new things. I think this also goes for us as staff at universities. We often get in our little bubbles of focusing on admissions and enrollment and these different types of things that we sometimes forget. We have these large institutions with all of these world-class opportunities around us, just across the street or across campus or in our communities, there as well. So we also are trying to be intentional in that regard. But I think certainly, students might have a few passions, but I think we also find that students enjoy the passions of their classmates as well. We're learning about those passions. We have a sprint club, an informal sprint club that started this year, a few students that just enjoyed running. And so as students were coming to campus and moving to Bloomington, they were able to connect with some of their classmates and people that just said, I had no interest in running, but this is fun. I get to hang out and run sprints with my classmates. And so they're out there every week, just running sprints. It doesn't necessarily sound like best thing that everybody wants to do on the weekend. But it's a great camaraderie, there as well, that I think is something new and different to some of those candidates that, would have never said, yes, this is my passion, but their passion is that camaraderie. And I think you'll find that in, learning new things, having new experiences, with your classmates there as well.
You'll note, Brad, that your Kelley students, they're not just running, they're sprinting. And I'm sure that accelerated pace. Also, in that first year, Katie, working with the Career Management Center, as they are exploring new paths, thinking about internships. Just talk us through how that's also being fit in as part of this journey of self-discovery.
Yeah, it actually starts before our students arrive on campus. Over the summer, they'll start to have one-on-one appointments with the career coach that aligns with their initial thought around industry that they're excited to explore. They'll have some resume coaching, just understanding the landscape of those industries and also the timeline of how this all unfolds. Then our students come for orientation. They start their first few weeks of classes in August, and we actually put a pause on all recruiting so that you can find your feet underneath you, explore all these wonderful opportunities around campus before we sort of open up the access to employers and vice versa. But I think really laying out that timeline layering on what comes next and helping students not feel overwhelmed by all of the excitement happening around them and all of the change in processes that maybe they didn't experience in their previous career searching, but also making sure they understand how the different communities in the business school will help support their journey, right? The Career Center and the career coaches work hand in hand with our faculty from those industries who work hand in hand with our student clubs that are more professionally oriented and then are supported by our centers of excellence. So for example, financial services and the investment management and wealth management clubs are supported greatly by the Investment Management Institute, which has access to alumni and industry partners that engage at different stages of that recruiting and career process. So really early on understanding how and when those different support systems will engage you and when to go back to them, right? Don't just go once, go back when it's the next stage. You've got that resume. Now you've got your interview. Oh, now I've got my offer. What do I do next? These are great times to head back into the Career Center and engage with those professionals.
Right. And now the Ross class of 25, perhaps it feels like yesterday, Andrew, that you welcomed them in the fall of 2023, and then breathlessly they're approaching the end of their 2 years. If we were to ask them 5 years, 10 years out to reflect on their experience at Ross, maybe some of the unexpected things, or that weren't immediately apparent during the MBA, but with hindsight, they look back and say, wow, that has proved to be incredibly powerful. What sort of things do you think they might share?
So definitely their MAP experience, without a doubt, is transformational. But I think that again, we are a college town, as we've all made aware, all of our programs are, is that community of the greater university too, whether it be going to a football game or experiencing the art fair, that the walkability of our campus and the city of Ann Arbor, those stand out as those memorable moments. And then I would say, as you look back as an alum, it is also a very reflective process, is that close-knit community that allowed you to be your true self. You definitely want to find an environment where you feel comfortable, that you can bring your true identity, and that you can just leverage all the growth in those opportunities. That's what our alums like. And there's a program there for everybody here on this call and who will listen. I think those are the things to look for, because you want to be that alum that does say go blue, like that you really just embodied the entire experience.
Yeah. Well, this theme of authenticity, Brad, and you talked about it in the application, be yourself. Kelley has an outstanding ROI on the program, one of the best in the country. But when a candidate thinks about it, yeah, it made sense in terms of my career, the dollars, but things that they've learned about themselves. Is it a self-confidence? What are some of the less tangible ROI that they share with you?
Yeah, certainly. And I think a lot of it, is begins with, like I said, Me Inc. And we have a program called Me Inc. and it's called that for a reason. The personal development of each individual student as their own business, own personal brand, own personal kind of path that they're taking, there as well. And I think that's, building on your previous question about, what do students reflect back on that might have surprised them. I think a lot of times students, sometimes will come in and say, but this is a lot of fluff and soft stuff about me. I want to just learn and get my MBA, there as well. Like, when do we start doing that? There, but I think taking the 3 weeks and being very intentional about that, and digging into who each individual person is, and them reflecting on that themselves, is meaningful. I think we've mentioned it already. Like, this is a transformational experience and journey. It's probably the only time in your career and in your life where you're able to kind of put everything on pause and focus on yourself. Whether it's the 2 years of the program or 3 weeks of Me Inc. leading up to the program, so that you can, when you get to the program, when that starts, you can hit the ground running, have a strategic plan for the next 2 years of your life there as well. I think that's, one of the key things for our students that they reflect back on and say, either I was excited for Me Inc., but I didn't expect to really learn this much about myself, and it really set the tone for helping me figure out what I wanted to do for 2 years. or hey, I wasn't excited for that, but reflecting back, I'm really glad that I did it because I got a whole lot out of it that, again, I was just looking for my MBA and I got so much more.
Right. And Katie, investing in yourself, in Me Inc., and finding the right moment. I mean, that must be a very personal question in terms of the right time to go back to business school. How do you like to encourage candidates to think about it from their own personal path of what might be a good moment to go back to business school?
Yeah, I certainly subscribe to there are better times and worse times to go back to business school. These are very personal decisions, and you should always be including your personal support system in those decisions, right? This is as much going to influence their life. So make sure you're folding them into those conversations. I think that what I love to look for in an application is what was that pivotal moment or that project you were a part of or that process you tried to change and hit resistance, and in reflection thought, wow, if I'd had a different set of skills or I'd had some of my strengths be stronger, would I have been successful in this? And I think that that is a great moment to push pause and focus on filling those blind spots and strengthening those strengths, much like our programs will provide you with that opportunity to do. So for me, I love to look for that sort of golden thread in an application of someone who's really thought and reflected on, gosh, if I had had a stronger toolkit, how could I have been more impactful in this project or this process or in my company?
Right. I started by asking each of you what you loved about your respective institutions. And with reflection, it wasn't just one question, because I think that you've continued to answer that question for the last 45 minutes. So as our viewers, thinking about this exciting next step, you've been very generous to share your time with Centre Court, but they'd love to find out more. Andrea, starting with Ross, just different touch points, alums, things that you're organizing within the school for them to find out more about the program.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So definitely take a look at our website. There's a couple resources within that website I think that I would want you to start with is look at our events. We have a number of virtual in-person events. We come to a lot of the major cities across the globe, and we're hosting at least I don't know the number, but it is many per week of virtual events, as well as if you want to come on campus. We also have a very active student and alumni ambassadors page with a number of different filters. So if you want to search for an industry, concentration, a student resource group, and connect with someone that has those experiences, you have the ability to do it. And then we also have a very long running, it's in its 9th season podcast, Business Beyond Usual. It is student led and there's a lot of different topics on there. So not that you need to listen in on every single podcast, but you can pick and choose topics that resonate with you. And I think those are a good way to get started. The more informed you can be about the programs that you want to be applying to, the better off it will be in that overall admissions experience. So I encourage you to do that with all the programs that you're interested in.
Now that you've said it, Andrea, you know that in the next year you will have one applicant at least that listens to every single podcast, and they'll love it. It's a great
That'll
win.
be a differentiator. I would add that in your optional essay. Like I listen to them all. I try and listen to them when I'm doing chores around the house, but I haven't listened to all of them yet.
A great window into the school and finding out more about Kelley, meeting with your team, Brad, and also perhaps when reaching out to alum that have their own busy lives, how that can be a very insightful and productive discussion, and respectful too.
Yes, certainly. I think, all of us are going to have a lot of the resources that Andrea mentioned, but I think, definitely connecting with the schools. I think if there's a right way to go about this, Kenan's often asked, what's the right thing to put in my application? I'm going to say, what's the right way to go about this is you should put more work. The most work should come before your application. That the application, when you get to that point, if you've done it the right way, should be pretty straightforward and seamless. Because ideally, you put the time into researching, thinking about yourself first, making it about you again, as a candidate, on what you're looking for, what you want to get out of this experience, but then taking the time to get to know the variety of schools that are out there, engage with those that, sound interesting at certain points, learn as much as you can about those programs and narrow that down, rather than take a very broad approach or a very pragmatic approach of, just looking at rankings or whatever it might be. Think about those things that are important to you and find those programs that fit. There is, I think, the most important thing that I've always said, and I know a number of colleagues, I know my colleagues on this call have said as well, too. And so I think you putting that time in up front to get to know the schools through visiting campus or virtual events or in-person recruitment events or connecting with current students. You mentioned alumni. I think any connections that you can have. All of our business schools also, there's more than likely you've crossed paths with one of our alumni. Either you work with them in your current organization or whatnot. There are great tools out there. LinkedIn is a great tool. You can sort and filter by school, by company, and find some alumni that work in the organization that you might be at, there, or are that you might have crossed paths with, and connect with them. See if they're willing to chat with you about their experience and not just their experience with our school, but their experience as a candidate in that field, in that industry, how they've been able to be successful, how the MBA helped them, what value the MBA provided, I think in general, there as well to make it more meaningful for you as a candidate and then eventually as a student.
Right. You all remind me that I feel that it's a gift, this opportunity to apply to business school and the self-reflection inherent in all of that. But Katie, I haven't got it all worked out, so I'm hesitant to reach out to the school and, what am I actually going to ask alums? But this is part of the opportunity, right? To connect with you, your teams. You're very generous in the time that you'll spend with people to help them think this through.
Yeah, we highly encourage you to be making connections and thinking about the touch points as depth over breadth, right? Build relationships with those individuals that you've connected with either professionally, or maybe they're an alum of your previous institution, or they've made a pivot that you can see in LinkedIn. Maybe you saw them on a panel somewhere. But I encourage you to find a handful of folks that you can have some depth with in those conversations. And if they don't have the right answer, or they may think of another classmate to connect you to, that is the next step in that process. I think everyone experiences UNC differently, right? And as they should. We all have unique walks around Kenan-Flagler. So make sure you're asking similar questions of different people to really understand how the community engages and how each individual experiences being an MBA student here. We're also as transparent as we can be. And so always ask the question. And if I don't have the answer, I'm going to find the right person to talk to you, right? It is not in my best interest to not provide you with answers that are going to support you getting that offer of admittance and saying, yes, I'm going to hit accept. And I'm so excited to come to Chapel Hill for my MBA. That's my team's goal, right? Is that we provide you with as many touch points as possible, or the strongest touch points as possible, so that you are so excited when you get that offer of admission that you know exactly where you want to spend the next 2 years.
Well, the world is changing, but one constant is the power of investing in yourself. And I think all three of you have shared through 3 extraordinary MBA programs, the opportunities that creates. So Andrea, Katie, Brad, thanks for spending the last 45 minutes with us, Santa Court. It was a real pleasure.